Починаємо?
Так.
Let's start.
Отже,
Yes.
тоді офіційно
So
починаємо
now
четвертий
officially
день
started the
міжнародного форуму
fourth
медіації
day of
Міжнародного
the
форуму
10th
медіації
International
Гааги.
Forum of Mediation and
Ми
Law.
вчора перетнули екватор.
Yesterday we
Перший
passed
вісник цього
the
формату.
middle line.
Ще
The
тиждень.
3 days of
Дякуємо,
forum
що ви
are already
залишаєтеся
over.
з нами.
3 days are still ahead of
Віримо вам
us.
по вашим емоціям.
Thank you
Відчуваємо,
for
що
staying
цей
with
час
us. We
дуже
believe
прихід
and
цього заходу
we
є
feel it based on
зашвидшеною
your
оскільки
feedback that it is useful for you and everyone is happy about the level of speakers and discussions. And today we have nonetheless more interesting day. We will be discussing the topics where we could have doubts if there are space for mediation or other ADRs, or maybe we need to pay more attention to the alternative dispute resolution in this topic. Today we will start with the tax conciliation as a space for dialogue between business and government. And we will start in just a couple of minutes. Then we will have a separate event with the International Mediation Institute. We will be discussing about the standards and how it helps develop mediation on the local markets. We will dive deeper. We would also discuss in the evening at 17 o'clock Ukrainian time. We would be talking about the ecosystem on when it comes to dispute resolution in business. We will be talking about opportunities for business, alternative to litigations. And in the evening, we will be finishing with an amazing event called After the Front. This will be the stories by Ukrainian mediators. Those will be colleagues from Ukraine, UK, United States. And we will be happy to share this day with you. And before I give the floor to the moderator of the first session, Natalia Kovalka, I would like to draw your attention to one of the opportunities we created for you. You will see link in the chat to Padlet. I will show you right away because the most valuable thing that we have is our communication with one another, exchange of contacts between us, and that we can organize and create. In addition to quality content and interesting topic, we can also create opportunity for networking during this forum. We created a space where you could easily join because in Zoom chat you can lose contacts, but this space is going to stay open forever. And this is an example where we edit ourselves. You can see the whole world. You can add yourself to separate categories like veterans, attorneys, judges, or no category at all. But we would be able to see each other, and it is easy to do. You need to press this big red button with the plus sign, and you can add a tag at which location you are. You can even add your photo or link to your social networks. Maybe tell a little bit about yourself so that maybe somebody would be able to find you and connect with you and exchange experience. So feel free to fill this space during the forum or after the end. We will send everyone the link, and everyone who would like to share, you can share. You will be visible, you can exchange experience, get to know somebody. So feel free to join and add information about yourself. And I will not take more of your time because I would already like to hear more about the opportunity for tax conciliation in other ways than litigation in court. So I'm giving the floor to Natalia Kovalko, who is in fact has been for many years a person who appreciates a mediator, and she does not only appreciates it, she also uses it. She also has a scholar background, she has a PhD, and she's a professor of the financial law faculty. And this is not an accident that she's going to be moderator, because she is honorable lawyer of Ukraine, and she has a lot of other qualities which you can read in the program. She is a lawyer, mediator, but most importantly, she is an awesome person, and she indeed believes in mediation. She makes effort to develop it. And I'm giving the floor to you, Natalia, and I'm looking forward to the presentations by everyone. Thank you, Luisa. Thank you, everyone. This is indeed interesting and unique because this is a 10th anniversary of Forum. And I would like to thank Luisa for introduction. And it is an honor for me to be moderator of this session that is dedicated to tax conciliation, where is a space for dialogue between government and business. Why it is important? It is because I have been teaching the financial law in Taras Shevchenko University in Kiev, and I have been a mediator even before the law on mediation was adopted in Ukraine. I launched in my university a special course which is called Alternative Dispute Resolution in Tax Relations and Financial Relations. And when I started it, I would like to thank the leaders of my university, because back then there were no law on mediation, there were no cases, and there were no clear understanding on tax case. We had only administrative procedure and, of course, court litigation. And when I suggested that maybe let's give our students the skills to communicate, to interact, and how to approach the clients, and that we can explain that there are other ways to sort disputes other than court. And it looked fine, but there were no understanding how we will tell students that there is tax mediation if we had no cases. But thank you to our partners from other countries and to mediators who are preaching and practicing mediation for years, we learned from this international experience, and it was very interesting for our students as well. And now we are talking not only about theory, but also about practice. And we can see today that hopefully tax mediations will take place in Ukraine. And on our way to Euro integration, we would like to be a good partner and to also use the principles that are used. So I would like to invite our panelists. Today we have Piet De Vos. He is the chief of the financial service and mediation. He is in charge of more than 40 persons who negotiate and help business and Belgium administration. He also have a lot of experience working in remission of double taxation, and he works with UN, EU, OSCE, and others, and he will tell us about the Belgian experience, what was the path of Belgium and how it could be useful for Ukraine. Also, you have Chris Fentz. He is accountant with more than 22 years of working in Revenue and Customs Service. He is also mediator of complex ADR cases. Together with his colleague, colleagues, Ms. Nancy Stali, who is a senior mediator on IDR cases which are related to revenue and customs. Those two colleagues would be sharing experience on how everything is going on in the United Kingdom through the lens of mediation. I would also like to present you Daria Kosic. She is the chief of the department in the tax service of Ukraine. She worked in many fields. She was also working in court cases, providing legal aid related to the tax. And she has vast experience related to the tax law. And we also have Volodymyr Kutsenko, who is also a co-leader of the tax practice certified mediator and has more than 20 years of experience in corporate finance, anti-monopoly, and he also works with business in how it should work with state authorities, and he's also a member of the working group on taxation. Our panel participants would be ready to answer your questions, so please feel free to write and chat the questions. Some questions we will have time to answer. If we don't have time, then we will touch upon those questions during the week, so don't worry, none of your questions would be left unanswered. So let's start. Piet, the floor is yours. We are waiting for your presentation and for your report. Piet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope my presentation will appear on the screen within a few minutes. I don't see it.
Декілька секунд, я сподіваюся, допоможуть нам.
Just a couple of seconds. I hope we will have it launched.
In the meantime, I will, thank you very much, Dr. Kovalko, for introducing me. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to speak to you today about, let's say, the Belgian experience regarding to tax conciliation/mediation. I used our official domination of our department is the tax conciliation service, but it's very close to mediation, I think. So I will give you a brief presentation of our department. I am, since July 2022, head chairman of the board of the tax conciliation service. I'm responsible for the general management of the department, which employs around 40 people who are occupied on a daily basis with tax conciliation. And I have my own team, which of collaborators who are involved in litigations on corporate income tax, tax on non-residents, and VAT. On the Dutch side, because we are a department which covers the whole country of Belgium. So we have Dutch-speaking people and French-speaking people. We are French and Dutch-speaking. Okay, next slide, please. So that's the overview of my presentation. I will start with the mission and the role of the tax conciliation service. What can we do? What do we consider to be conciliation from our point of view? Why would you contact our department? How do we work in practice? Who can ask for tax conciliation at what moment? That's an important question. And how do we work in practice? And lastly, I will give you some statistics on the number of requests that we receive and most importantly, what our impact is on the tax litigations for which we receive requests. Next slide, please. Before going into a bit of more detail, perhaps it's important to situate our department within what we call the official nomination is the Federal Public Service of Finance of Belgium. That's, let's say, the Ministry of Finance of Belgium. We are one of the two, you see it on the slides, autonomous departments within the Federal Public Service of Finance. other one is the advanced ruling service. So let's say what's called, you can get a ruling in advance if you want tax certainty about a certain transaction that you want to do. You can ask for an advanced ruling to be able to know what are the tax consequences are of a certain transaction. That's in the beginning of the procedure. The tax conciliation service intervenes at the end of the procedure. Let's say if there is a litigation, there is an assessment of tax, the tax has been established, and there is a disagreement on the amount of tax, or there is a disagreement on the payment of tax. You cannot pay the tax within the period that you're supposed to pay the tax. If those disagreements arise, then we can be requested to intervene. We are autonomous because we are in between the tax administrations which assess and collect the taxes, and those tax administrations are listed at the bottom of the slides. Most important tax administrations for which we intervene is the General Administration of Taxes, and the administration which is responsible for the tax collection and, let's say, the recovery of taxes. That autonomy is important because we have to be neutral and objective. We are formally part of the Ministry of Finance, but we are independent from the tax administrations as such. That also has to do with the fact that one of our and I will come back on that later a bit more, that we can make recommendations. So we cannot only intervene and conciliate on specific disagreements and litigations, but we can also make general recommendations when we see that there is a general problem within the tax administrations. For example, if there is a lack of uniformity in the position of the tax administration with regard to a certain tax issue or problem. And that's a responsibility which we use often, let's say. Another department which is also in the slides is a department which is part of the chairman's services, let's say. We fall directly under the authority of the chairman of the Federal Public Service of Finance. Another department which is part of the chairman's service is the complaint service. So if you have a litigation or a disagreement which does not fall within our authority, then you can address your complaint to the complaint service. So that's a different department. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is our mission and what are our objectives? Next slide, please. Yes, that's a bit of a scheme that is a bit covering all. Let's say our objective, that's very important, is to avoid or reduce the number of judicial proceedings. In Belgium, there are a lot of litigations on taxes between the tax administration and the civilians and the enterprises. Our objective, our mission is to reduce those number of judicial proceedings because you can go to court, but the period for which you have to wait for a ruling of the courts is very long. In Brussels, for example, it can take 10 to 15 years before you have a decision of the court. So it's very time wasting. So we try from our department to avoid that people go to court. How do we do that? Of course, we conciliate with a view to reaching an agreement between the two parties. An important aspect is also compliance. You have disputes or litigations which are, let me say, in a sort of gray zone where there is room for conciliation and room to reach an agreement where both parties give in a bit of their position. on the other hand, you have also litigations or disputes which tending more to be compliant issues, where the legislation is clear, let's say, and where we can consider that one of the parties, that may be the taxpayer or that may be also the tax administration, has, let's say, is right. And there our objective is to convince, because we cannot decide, the party that, according to us, is right, to convince that he has to give in. We have to be very subtle on that, because we cannot decide. It's up to the tax administration to decide. But our objective is then to try to convince the taxpayer or the tax administration that going to court has no sense, because the tax legislation is clear. We do that by installing a dialogue between the parties, and also by, as I said, by explaining the tax legislation if the tax legislation rules are clear. Next slide. So that's summarizes a bit. So our objective is to reduce and avoid judicial proceedings. We do that by, on one hand, to conciliate in order to reach an agreement, and to understand, to explain to one of the parties how the tax legislation should be interpreted, and hopefully leading to an acceptance of one of the parties of the other party's position. And the last part at the bottom of the slide, that's about recommendations. So we try to contribute by making recommendations to the chairman of the Federal Republic of Finance to improve the functioning of the ministry, by making recommendation if we consider that there is a systemic problem or malfunctioning, for example, lack of uniformity, or if we believe that a certain tax rule is, or tax audit, if it's launched, in a lot of cases, the tax administration launches, let's say, organized tax audits around a certain tax issue. If we consider that the position that they take in that tax audit is not correct, we make a recommendation. Next slide. What is conciliation in our point of view? Next slide. Yes, it's an alternative resolution method by a neutral and independent third party. That's our department. We try to accompany both parties to find a solution for their disagreement based on their real interest. That's, I think, the general definition of mediation and conciliation. How we do that? By, first of all, getting all information on the table necessary to have a clean and transparent dialogue between the parties. So the information must be complete. That's normally our starting point. We consult with the tax administration if they need additional information, and we transmit that message to the taxpayer. If that information is complete, we try to understand the position of both parties. Eventually, look if it's more or less a compliance issue or an issue that is fit for conciliation. And then we try through bilateral talks and also plenary talks to have a good dialogue between the two parties, and in order to reach an agreement. In the meantime, we try also to, from time to time, but it depends on the issue and on the litigation, to make a proposal, for example, in the hope that one of both parties will accept it. We also, and that's on the next slides, tax legislation and tax rules in Belgium are very complex. It happens often that one of the parties is not very aware of the complexity of the rules and doesn't understand completely their impact. So explaining is an important part of our job in order to ensure that there is a balance in the knowledge between the two parties. And I must also admit that can also be the case with the tax administration. The civil servant dealing with the litigation may be new, may lack some experience and knowledge of the tax legislation. So it's also our job to accompany him or her in the understanding of the tax legislation. And hopefully he will or she will form an opinion that is in line with the tax rules. Next slide. Important also, we have to follow the law, of course. We cannot interpret legislation, perhaps only if the tax rules are very clear, of course, if there is no discussion. That means that we have also to follow the circulars or administrative positions. We cannot derogate from him. So if the tax administration has a certain position on the interpretation of a tax rule, then we cannot derogate from that rule, except, but that's then we are tending towards a recommendation if we think that that position is not in line with the legislation. But then we are talking about making recommendations. We cannot do that in an individual tax conciliation request. We cannot decide, of course. It's up to the tax administration to rule on the tax litigation. We cannot comment on that decision, and we cannot impose our point of view because then we cannot make any binding opinion, because then we are tending towards arbitration. Next slide. How we work and why would you contact our department? Next slide. We work free of charge. We work with practically no formalities. I will come back on that a bit later. The procedure is very informal, and we try to process the requests as quick as possible. That is not an easy task because there are a lot of litigations in Belgium. As I said, the tax legislation is very complex for civilians and enterprises, so it creates a lot of litigations. So the services within the tax administration which are responsible for dealing with these litigations are a bit understaffed, have a lot of workload. So we try to get a certain speed of processing the tax litigation. But I must admit, we are in the hands of the tax administration on that point. Also, perhaps important to mention, I didn't mention it yet, when talking about mediation, normally both parties around the table have to agree to conciliation. In our context, that's different. If the taxpayer, civilian or enterprise, makes a request for tax conciliation, then the tax administration has the obligation to conciliate and to participate, to cooperate. Does that always is the case? No, but mostly it is. And if they are not cooperate, then we try to convince them informally to participate. If that collaboration doesn't work, then we put it in our conciliation report. Next slide. That's something which I already touched upon. We are an independent service. Our collaborators are neutral. It's not always easy because the people which work within our within the tax conciliation service are civil servants which have formerly worked in the tax administration, and they are put at the disposal of the tax conciliation service for a period of 5 years. So they have a different role. And it's important that they take up that different role and that they explain it to both parties that they are not, let's say, a member of the tax administration, but that they are tax conciliators. So that's a very different role. It's not easy because both from the taxpayer side and from the tax administration side, we tend to have from time to time the remark that we are not neutral, but we try and to be, let's say, it's important. Next slide. There is no imposed scenario on how we work. That is also linked to the fact that we work very informally by phone, by organizing conciliation meetings bilateral and plenary. The people which work in our department are technical experts, experienced. As they have been working within the tax administration, they have a network. And they have access to the databases of the Ministry of Finance. So they know very well the administrative positions on the legal on the law. So they know what is possible, let's say, when there is a tax litigation. They know what cases are fit for conciliations and what not. Next slide. In practice, let me, next slide. Important, in which areas can we conciliate? That's practically all taxes which are federal. You see them on the slide. The most important are the income taxes, personal income tax, corporate income tax, and VAT. Also important, we can intervene if there is a litigation, a disagreement on the amount of tax. So you have received an assessment after an audit or not, but you have received an assessment of your amount of tax and you don't agree. And from that moment on, but I will come back on it, you can ask for conciliation. Secondly, there is a problem or a disagreement on the payment, on the recovery of taxes. You agree with your amount of tax, but you're unable to pay within the period that you have to pay your taxes. So you want to have an installment or a payment plan. In that case, we can also intervene and try to reach an agreement with the administration. Next slide. Who can introduce a request for tax conciliation? The taxpayer himself or his representative, a lawyer and a consultant or an accountant, etc. So you can ask yourself for tax conciliation, or you can ask to be represented by a mandatory. Next slide, and that's important. From which moment on you can ask for tax conciliation? In the law, because there is legislation for tax conciliation in Belgium, and the law says if there is a persistent disagreement between the administration and the taxpayer. To be more specific, next slide, because most cases deal with income taxes, you can ask for conciliation if you, and we're talking about now about the assessment, so a dispute on the amount of tax, if you have introduced a formal objection to a tax assessment and you have submitted that to the tax administration. So in Belgium in general, you have two phases. You have the audit phase. You introduce your tax declaration and that tax declaration can be audited. You receive, after an audit, you can agree or disagree. You have perhaps, hopefully, a dialogue with the tax auditor, the civil servant of the tax administration, which audits your tax declaration. If you don't agree, okay, there is a procedure, but at the end, receive a tax assessment. From then on, you can appeal, you can formally object by submitting to the tax administration that you don't agree with the assessed tax. From that moment on, then we are moving to the administrative litigation phase. From that moment on, you can ask for conciliation. But, and that's also important, you have to do it before the administrative decision has been made. So you object against the tax assessment, you formally object from the moment on that the administration has made a decision on that formal objection. You cannot longer apply for tax conciliation. Also, you can no longer apply if you go to court. So if you go to court, it's too late. That's the time frame within you have to introduce your request for tax conciliation. On the next slide, it's mentioned for VAT. That's more or less the same, but there the starting point is what we call a PV, a process verbal. It's a French term. If there is a process verbal, a PV of taxation, in that moment on, the VAT has been established, and from that moment on, you can formally object. And from the moment of formal objection, you can request for tax conciliation. But again, if you go to court, then it's too late. Next slide. When we're talking about recovery, collection of taxes, you agree with the amount of tax, but you have a problem with the payment, with the timely payment of the tax. There you first of all have to reach out to the tax collector to get a payment plan, because most cases, most litigations, disagreements which arrive with us are due to problems of payment. So you want to get a payment plan. You first have to reach out to the tax collector. And if you don't reach an agreement with the tax collector, you can you can introduce a request for a tax conciliation. And then we try to reach an agreement with the tax collector, taking into account your personal circumstances, your ability to pay, etc. Next slide. A quick word. We have in our legislation on tax conciliation that was introduced in 2017 and sort of suspension. So a suspension in order to allow the tax conciliation service to conciliate. There are a few conditions attached upon that suspensive effect. First of all, and now I'm talking again about income taxes, you have to object, first of all, of course, to the tax assessment. That must be admissible. Second condition, your request for tax conciliation must be introduced within 6 or 9 months. That's linked to the Belgium tax procedure, meaning that if you object to your tax assessment, the tax administration in a normal procedure has 6 months to decide. If there is no decision on the objection within 6 months, you can go to court. If you decide not to go to court, that's no problem. Then the tax administration can exceed the 6 months period. And then you can go to court whenever you like. But you can decide to wait for the decision of the tax administration. If you introduce your request for tax conciliation within the 6 months, then there is a suspensive effect of 4 months, meaning that the 6 months will be prolonged with 4 months and you arrive at 10 months, of which 9 months the tax administration cannot decide. Taxpayer cannot go to court. And the last month, in the 9th month, the tax administration may decide, and after 10 months, you can go to court. So it's allowing the tax conciliation service to do its work. You get some extra time in which the tax administration can further analyze and discuss with us and the taxpayer the disagreement and find a solution, but they cannot decide within 9 months, and then they can, in the 9th month, they can decide, the 10th month they can decide, and after 10 months, the taxpayer can go to court. If the tax conciliation request arrives after the 6 months, there is no problem, we can conciliate, but at each moment, the tax administration may decide or a taxpayer can go to court. But in practice, normally, we find an agreement with both of them to wait to decide and not to go to court because they ask for conciliation. The logic behind it is that you wait and that you don't go to court. Otherwise, it would be a bit awkward to ask for tax conciliation. Next slide. Yes, that explains the same issue on the suspensive effect. Next slide. I will go to try to speed up a bit. There is also a suspensive effect in the case of a request for conciliation in the area of collection of taxes. That's only 1 month in which the tax collector cannot do anything. And in order to allow the tax conciliation service to try to find an agreement. In collection, it has to go a lot faster. So that's why the delay or the suspension is only 1 month. Next slide. That's just how you can do it. And we are offering a lot of possibilities to induce a request by mail, by writing, by phone, etc. Next slide. I told you about the fact that there are not a lot of formalities. The only formalities there are that we have to acknowledge the receipt of the request within 5 working days. We have to decide on the fact if the request is admissible within 15 working days. Then we start up the conciliation procedure, and the ending is the we make a conciliation report, which we send to both parties, and which is not subject to any administrative or judicial appeal, the tax conciliation report. Next slide. Just a few words on what's on the conciliation report. We explain the positions of the both parties, which we summarize what happened during the procedure, how many meetings we had, if there was of the position of the both parties approached each other, if we found an agreement or not, and which remains undecided or not agreed. Or if there is agreement on all, we also put it in the report. If there is, for example, a lack of cooperation from the taxpayer or of the tax administration, we also put it in our report. Finally, next slide, that I may skip. Just mentioning that we have an annual report and it will be published next week on our site, just for information. It's only available in French and in Dutch, so not in English, unfortunately. That's a slide which you may skip because I want to end with some statistics. Yeah, the annual report will be published next week. The statistics, you see the number of, on the next slide, the number of requests from which we receive annually, including both litigations regarding the tax assessment, so the amount of tax on the one hand, and the recovery of taxes on the other hand. It has been going down in 2022 because we had, with the new board being established in the middle of 2022, we had decided to filter more requests in the beginning, more thoroughly the requests in the beginning, because we also receive a lot of questions for just for information. So we filtered those out, and those are on the real, let's say, the effective requests for conciliation. You also see the total and the amount of requests done by a mandatory, so by a representative of the taxpayer. Next slide. The number of requests per kind of tax, so that you see the majority is related to collection of taxes. And then on the assessment of tax, it's mostly personal income tax and corporate income tax are most frequently asked for conciliation. And then the impact, what's our impact? What are our results? That's on the next slide. No, that's another slide which I thought I had eliminated, but I've not done so. So that's the most important slide. So we reached in 2025 at a percentage of 74 agreements, let's say. That's all matters together. So recovery and taxation, let's say, assessment of tax. In recovery, the percentage is 77, so that's a really high percentage of agreements. And in taxation, it's 62. We consider that we have an agreement if one of the both parties, for example, agrees with the position of the other party. So if the tax administration accepts the objection, that's also an agreement for us. On the other hand, if the taxpayer accepts the position of the administration, that also falls within an agreement for us. And of course, if both parties give in a part of their position, that's of course also an agreement. I think that's the most important. The last slide, the next one, is on the future. Just to mention that the government, I think you have to click a few times to have the text of the slides, if I'm not mistaken. There is a government agreement in 2025, which mentions that that's the government plan to introduce arbitration in Belgium, because the number of judicial proceedings in Belgium still remains very high. So the government has a plan to introduce tax arbitration. We don't know any more details about that. It's just one line in the government agreement. So in the near future, it's possible that our tax conciliation service will be extended with tax arbitration, or there will be a third autonomous department, or there will be an external tax arbitration department outside of the Ministry of Finance. That's not decided yet. So it remains a bit unclear what the government will decide. So that's what I wanted to say. I hope I have not talked too long. I will be open for any questions after all the speakers. Thank you.
Дякую, Піте. Дякую за цікаву, неймовірно детальну презентацію.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for this great presentation. I have made a lot of notes. I have not known a lot about the tax conciliation. And actually, a good thing you told us is the balance of knowledge. We will get back to that. Now, I would like to pass the floor to Chris Lindsay. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I guess first of all, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Lindsay Stoley, who'll be presenting with me today. And would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you all. So for our session, Lindsay and I will outline how alternative dispute resolution, or ADR, operates within the UK tax system, how it works in practice, the key lessons we've learned, the value it delivers. But simply, ADR is about resolving disputes earlier, more collaboratively, and more efficiently than litigation. So, what is ADR in the UK context? Well, ADR is a flexible, voluntary process led by an impartial HMRC mediator. The mediator is trained in dispute resolution and works with both parties to explore a resolution. Although mediators are HMRC employees, they are independent from the case team and have had no prior involvement in the dispute. So their role is strictly facilitative, not decision-making. Importantly, the parties retain full control of the outcome, and discussions take place on a without prejudice basis, allowing open and constructive negotiation. So ADR is an alternative to tribunal rather than a replacement. It operates within HMRC's litigation and settlement strategy, so any outcome must reflect the correct legal position rather than a compromise for its own sake. So where ADR fits in the dispute life cycle, ADR can be used at multiple stages, including during inquiries, after decisions have been made, or when disputes have stalled. It's particularly useful where there have been a breakdown in communication, disagreements about evidence, or misunderstandings of each party's position. So in many cases, the focus shifts from arguing who is right to understanding what the evidence actually shows. And importantly, ADR does not remove appeal rights for customers and sits alongside the formal tribunal process. So ADR in the UK consistently results in full or partial resolution in a significant proportion of referred cases. So I'll now hand over to Lindsay, who will talk a little bit about how ADR is organised in practice.
Лінці,
Thank you.
мікрофон. Дякую. Мгм.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Lindsay Stalley. I work on the Alternative Dispute Resolution team. So to bring this to life, it's helpful to look at ADR in terms of scale, demand, and how it operates in practice across HMRC within the UK. So each year we receive around 1,600 referrals into ADR, which reflects a consistent demand for a more collaborative way of working to resolve disputes. The majority of these applications come directly from agents and customers, and this makes up approximately 75% of the referrals. However, ADR is not purely externally driven. We also receive referrals coming from within HMRC itself, including caseworkers, legal groups, and other internal teams, accounting for around 25% of the cases. That internal engagement is important as it shows ADR is recognised as a useful tool for resolving disputes. In terms of scope, ADR operates across all UK taxes, so we cover every tax head, personal tax, corporation tax, VAT. We aim to include the process we aim to conclude the process within around 120 days. That includes initial assessment, preparation, the mediation meeting itself, and agreeing and recovering the outcome. Many cases are resolved more quickly, and that depends on their complexity. So looking at outcomes, ADR consistently delivers positive results. We aim to resolve 80% of the cases. So in last year, which was 2025-2026, we achieved 89.16%, which is around 49% of the cases achieved a full resolution, with a further approximate 41% resulting in a partial resolution or a significant narrowing of the issues. So even when a dispute doesn't fully settle, the process often brings much greater clarity, helping both parties better understand the remaining areas of any disagreement. So from a wider perspective, the contribution is a more effective dispute resolution system, reducing the number of cases progressing to tribunal. This enables lowering of costs and ensuring that where litigation does proceed, the issues are more clearly defined and more focused. The process begins with an application or a referral. A mediator is then assesses its suitability, typically within a defined time frame. And our aim is to accept or reject an application within 30 days. And then seeking, obviously, to conclude the process within around 120 days of that acceptance. The mediator does not decide the case, but facilitates discussion. It challenges assumptions and helps identify routes to the resolution. The process involves structural preparation, including exchange of evidence and opening statements, followed by a mediation meeting with joint and private sessions for both parties. The discussions are collaborative rather than adversarial and focuses on resolving issues rather than defending positions. And I'm now going to hand you back to Chris, who will go through an example. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. So yes, just by way of an example, so consider typically a VAT issue. So I think the equivalent, and I might get this wrong, and apologies if I do, is PDV in the Ukraine. So in this case, in this example, it's a dispute involving input tax recovery. So HMRC considered that input tax had been overclaimed due to insufficient evidence. So while the taxpayer believed their methodology was reasonable and it is misunderstood, the dispute centred on the interpretation of evidence and differing assumptions and calculations. So during ADR, the mediator clarified the evidence and highlighted that both parties were working from different assumptions. So this allowed the discussion to shift towards agreeing a revised methodology. And the outcome in this case was a partial resolution with some reduction in the assessment and a narrowing of the outstanding issues, which in the end is all recorded in a record of outcome. So the key lessons learned from that particular example is that first, early engagement is critical. ADR is most effective before positions become entrenched. Secondly, many disputes stem from misunderstandings rather than fundamental disagreement. ADR often reveals where facts have not been fully understood or where evidence has been interpreted differently. And so ADR is an opportunity to bring those out and discuss in an open forum. So thirdly, it's essential to have decision makers present to enable agreement on the day of the actual ADR meeting. Fourth, I guess, lesson is that ADR improves communication and behaviour, even when there's a case where cases don't fully settle. And then I guess finally, while the process is structured, it must remain flexible to accommodate the complexity of disputes, which is an important factor. So the value of ADR, for taxpayers, ADR offers faster resolution, lower costs and a less stressful alternative to going through tribunal or the court service, while allowing a direct voice in the process. So for HMRC, it reduces litigation costs, improves efficiency and supports better decision making. For the wider system, ADR ensures that only genuinely unresolved legal disputes progress to tribunal, and even then the issues are better defined and more focused. So ADR consistently shows or consistently delivers full or partial resolution, or at a minimum provides clarity on the issues and next steps. So in overall summary, the UK ADR model is mediator-led but party-controlled, and it has embedded legal safeguards. It can focus early on issues of dispute and encourages collaborative resolution. So ADR is not about compromise for its own sake. It's about reaching the right outcome more effectively, achieving faster, fairer outcomes for our customers and HMRC. And ultimately, ADR works because it reconnects the conversation, and most disputes at their core need exactly that. So that's the conclusion to our presentation. And so both Lindsay and I are more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And just like to say once again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Дуже дякую, Кріс, Лінсі. Цікава, неймовірна
Thank you
презентація.
very much, Chris and Lindsay. Very interesting presentation and your achievements. And 1,600 requests and the amount of positive resolution, it was 85 and more percent. I think it's impressive, and there is space for us to learn from you. And hopefully we will have joint solutions so that we can have practice. We have a couple of questions, but they will be left for the end because we still have two speakers, and I'm giving the floor to Daria Kosic. Daria, are you with us?
Дякую. Дар'я. Так, Дар'я, ви нас чуєте?
Daria, can you hear us?
Тільки що підтвердили з Державної податкової служби, що
Tax office confirmed that Daria is present, but we also have the representative of the tax service of Ukraine, Alexander. Maybe you can tell us if Daria can hear us. If Daria is here but cannot switch on the mic, please raise your hand because we have a lot of participants, more than 400, so that if tech support needs to see whom to give the microphone rights. I was trying to find Daria among 407 participants. So if I may, maybe I would be able to see Daria. Please raise your hand, then you would be immediately be able to switch on the microphone. Because we got confirmation that Daria is here. Daria also texted me that she is here, but in order... Okay, we have joined.
Бачу, дуже дякую, Володимир, за допомогу.
Okay, Volodymyr, thank you for your support. Hopefully, we will find Daria, and we will continue our interesting and fruitful discussion. And I think that everyone is excited, and there were questions because everyone was deeply engrossed in presentation. While everyone is joining, I would like to thank the speakers who have already presented to Peter, Chris, Lindsay. In fact, it is not a secret, but it is about high level of professionalism because you respond to cold calling. I sent a letter, you just answered me, you met with me, we discussed it, and thanks to that, within this forum, the whole world, we have representatives from more than from 100 countries. Everyone can learn from your experience, and Ukraine can learn from your experience, and we can hear it and assess, borrow, and implement. But you also inspire us that alternative dispute resolution between business and government, it has future, it has results. And I'm grateful for you responding to letters that you get. This is just amazing. Thank you, Louisa, because indeed it was a challenge for us. We kept this panel secret because we had our fingers crossed for everyone to be able to join. Daria won again. If you have technical issues, I would give the floor to Volodymyr. Maybe he could present and continue our discussion. Okay, Volodymyr? Yeah, no problem. Hello, everyone. I will try to share my presentation.
Так, чи є вона на екрані?
Can you see it?
Так, ми бачимо вас.
Yes,
Презентацію.
and we see presentation.
Дякую. Відповідно, починаємо.
Thank you. So I will start.
Я б основна тема презентації, звісно,
The key topic of the presentation is tax mediation, and we are lucky because we got a positive experience and we would like to share it. But also, I would like to tell a little bit about us, about our organization. We are working and have been created in 2014, started working in 2015. And we are hearing the complaints from business against the authorities. Right now, our team comprises 37 specialists, which is business ombudsperson and 2 deputies. We have 20 experts in various fields of law. We already have 9 certified mediators. And we have also administrative team and communications. On the picture, you can see only some of those people, but it also gives you at least some impression. We also consider complaints from business, from physical persons who are sole traders. They complain against authorities, local authorities, and tax services. The complaints we hear, we try to do it flexibly, but we still have requirements for the complaints. First of all, complaints should not be very old, like not older than 1 year. It should be related to the authority. It should not be in court right now. And the person filing complaint, they should try to solve the issue on their own before coming to us, because we are not the first point of contact for the state authorities, because you still need to do homework. The complaint is filed via the website, and briefly about the financial statistics. In all those years, we have heard a little bit more than 14,000, around 15,000 complaints. 62% were completed successfully. We have also published 21 systemic report and 3 investigations initiated by us, and the financial effect is 33 billion of Ukrainian hryvnias. Up to recently, it was all statistics we were presenting, but recently, last year and this year, we have the first successful case of tax mediation. We fruitfully cooperate with all regional departments of tax service, but when it comes to mediation with the Office of Large Payers, maybe it is natural because those are the largest taxpayers, and therefore the cases are the most serious ones. We can say that right now we have up to 5 mediation cases in progress right now, and a couple of them are already on the final stage, and they will also most likely be successful. So here I would like to thank the tax service of Ukraine, because they believed in us. We were persuading them for a long time. We were telling them that that this tool works and it could be used. Some elements of tax mediation has already been used in our work on various issues, but now we have a brilliant opportunity to work the way it should be in classical sense of law of Ukraine on mediation. It is also worth noting about tax mediation. Why tax mediation? Here you can see top 5 matters for complaint, which is taxes. Of course, it is already way far ahead. This is natural. It doesn't mean that tax service is bad, but what related to money is the most of interest to everyone. So thanks to this and such complaints we have considered, we have vast experience and
контакти
And we have contacts with the state tax service, with the regional departments, with the Ministry of Finance, with relevant committee in the parliament, which gives us the opportunity to be up to date on this topic.
Відповідно, стандартна
When it comes to standard work that we are doing, recently, as I said, we also added tax mediation in addition to other services, and most likely,
дуже коротко хотів би
I would like to briefly
додати
briefly
про
add
те, як ми працюємо в цій
on how we work in this field.
В принципі, ну, ті, хто працює з податками,
Those who work with taxes, they know it, that as soon as there is dispute or argument with the tax service, the first instinct, at least from the taxpayer side, go to court.
ми намагаємося
We are trying
змінити цю
We
тенденцію.
are trying to change this trend.
Щасливі, що
We are happy
Державна податкова служба
that the tax service is also trying to see it as a priority, and they're trying to change this approach and settle tax disputes
в досудовому порядку.
in
Звісно,
out of court. Of course, some percent of cases would still sorted out of court, but what we see in our studies and our old investigations is that this percent is not very large. We are talking about administrative cases that would be 10%, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, but this is not a very high percentage. Considering the load on the legal system, especially in Kyiv, I think pretty much everyone faced it with the issue of liquidation of Kyiv Circuit Court and redistribution of cases.
розгляд справ буксує.
The case hearing is extended in time,
Не сприяє
and it does not help neither the taxpayers nor the tax service nor the legal system or court system to work normally.
Ми почали в цій сфері
And
рухатися.
we started working in this field.
Насправді я бачу вже навіть
In fact, I see, based on those first cases, they have many challenges in proving to the tax service and the taxpayers about what our role is, because as you can probably understand, each of those parties considers to be the right one. And it is important that we as mediators, we are not the arbitrators, we are not judges. We do not assess and judge arguments. They do not provide the positions that we think this party is right or that party is right. Our goal is to help reach an agreement, considering our experience, considering our relationship with authorities and trust from our people who complain. We hope that we will keep getting successful cases when it comes to tax mediation. Also, briefly, I would like to stop on this thing. For mediators, it would not be a new thing, but for those who is only starting learning this new tool. For me, especially, it was very interesting when we were going through certification and training. It was about the positions of parties that you need to assess through this triangle of law, strength, and interest, because position of every party is the tip of the iceberg, but everything underneath the surface, what you don't see, this is the interest. And a good mediator would first see for him or herself what is the interest. In majority of cases, people are prone not to say what is the interest, and the task of mediator is to figure out what is the interest of taxpayer and tax authority, and to help them reach an agreement. And what is also interesting, it was interesting to listen to colleagues from the United Kingdom and Belgium, because they already have it all sorted. But when we were gathering the information and we were looking around if it is if tax mediation is used anywhere, of course, first of all, we figured that mediation is more frequently used in civilian cases or family mediation, where parties are more or less of the same, let's say, weight category. But when you're talking to tax authority, this is an interesting story, because the administrative leverage of the tax authority cannot be compared to what the taxpayer has. But after working with large taxpayers, we understand they also have certain leverages, and they are major taxpayers, and they systemically create the largest, they produce the largest income into the state treasury. So this is also challenge and opportunity at the same time for us to sort tax disputes without getting to court. It is also important to add, as far as we understand, right now there are changes in progress regarding amendments to tax code and tax mediation, but at the same time this tool is so flexible that we managed to use it, and as you can see it based on the results, we are already using it. For lawyers, there is a special comment for them to understand. Those who worked with us or keep working with us, they understand that we consider complaints at the administrative stage. If it is legal audit, then it's not at the stage of objections, or if you already have the complaints, then you can object. So classical work will be done at this stage. With tax mediation, it is a little bit different because at the stage where the tax service are already considering the case, I see based on experience from what I hear from Belgium experience, it is exactly at this stage where it started there. where you have filed a complaint and you start the conciliation process. But we don't have this process for now, so it is important
по податковому медіацію, якщо ви бачите, що назріває
on tax mediation, if you see that there is a dispute coming and you see that there is already audit and you hear the position of the auditor and you hear that it is different from your position, it means that you need to come to us at the earlier stage. We will study the issue and consult you whether tax mediation is possible at this stage. Why? Because usually when, depending on the difficulty of the case, mediation can last for a long time or for a short time. But if there is already administrative procedure in place, then they already have deadlines. Where you have only 30 days to object to that tax decision, which has to be extended by another 30 days. Most likely it would not be enough for tax mediation. And overall, when the higher instance service is already considering it, you already need to do mediation with a regional authority. So it would not be entirely convenient to do it at this stage. So the practical takeaway from those successful cases, it is better to start sooner rather than later. And we are happy to see that not only tax authorities, but also the taxpayers are the ones initiating the tax mediation. It gets interesting for the business, and they hopefully will be using it in the future, and it would be popular. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Volodymyr. It was very interesting, and I am happy that we already have positive cases. What you heard from Volodymyr, you can follow him on LinkedIn and to read more about this case. This was published. Everyone who followed the first tax mediation case, everyone wrote about it, and it is important to start. Dear people, we still have another speaker. We have questions. Thank you, Chris, for already answering Olga's question. Volodymyr, if you may, please also answer Tatiana in chat, because unfortunately we have limited time, and it turned out we can speak about tax mediation for more than 90 minutes. So, Daria, are you here? Yes. Hello everyone. I am happy to see everyone. I heard the presentations from the speakers. They're interesting and they're very important for our community right now. On behalf of Tax Service of Ukraine, I would like to tell you why there is a need of tax mediation. Tax cases could last for ages, and court system requires a lot of resources both from business and government. And part of the cases emerge based on different interpretation of the legislation or failure to communicate between the parties. We also see the international practice where we see the efficacy of ADR. And we would like to emphasize that we need a mechanism that would allow parties to settle disputes before them being transferred into a long administrative court hearing. Tax service sees tax mediation as such. First of all, it should be voluntary. Parties should be equal. Mediators should be independent and neutral, and the parties should be honest. And mediation is doesn't mean giving up the control. It doesn't mean that tax service can agree on something against the law. So we would like to not use mediation where there are criminal signs, for example, intentional tax evasion, or for example, for cases where law provides for criminal charges. And tax authority is now doing steps to implement tax mediation. We already have 3 successful cases. We already communicate and cooperate with Ukrainian Academy of Mediation. It also helped us to train specialists on how to resolve disputes. And we already have the first draft on changes to the tax code regarding the implementation of tax mediation procedure. After we finish the draft, we will submit them to the Ministry of Finance. I would also like to sum up and say that we probably reached the point where the future of tax relationship is a balance between constructive dialogue and effective control. Mediation does not replace law. It does not cancel responsibility for violations. It just creates opportunities to quickly sort the dispute and in a way that would be more beneficial to government and the taxpayer. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Louisa, for organizing this platform where we could hear the international practice and colleague from the ombudsperson. So giving back to you. Thank you, Daria. Thank you, colleagues. And we have heard that this year, most likely, we will have amendments in the legislation of Ukraine, and the tax service sees the following steps. It makes my heart happy because this is also alternative for court. We are right on time for finishing this session. Thank you, speakers, for your insights and for your positive attitude and for staying tuned for future steps of Ukraine. And thank you very much for your experience, dear colleagues, dear Peter, Chris, Lindsay. Thank you for being with us. We will stay in touch and maybe we will ask you more questions. Maybe you could highlight something that would make mediation on tax issues possible. So the floor is back to mediators, to organizers. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm joining on all those reactions that you see on screen that are going to the surface. And indeed, it is extremely useful information. There is a lot to think about, and I would like to draw your attention to us initiating a program within the consent program. We are creating an interdisciplinary working group on IDR. We are creating this platform. We have tax authorities and other authorities. We would like others to join also. We also would like to people joining and joining forces to use mediation and dialogue with the government.
That's not only about the taxation disputes, but here is a good example that there is a great movement, powerful movement, and there is an interest from all sides. And I'm sure that in a year we will have something to talk about, and Ukraine will be able to share their experience even at the international forum. like today, the colleagues from Belgium and Britain share their experience with us. And I have to say that the cooperation with the State Taxation Service is not limited by only the issues of mediation or trainings. I have to say that when you have a competition for the children's paintings, we have a representative of the State Taxation Service of Ukraine, and tomorrow we will present that. So that's exactly about the atypical partnership, unexpected partnership, but that's about what we can do together, and we can create this synergy, and we can disseminate this culture. Thank you so very much for this very interesting session. Let's keep in touch. We will continue according to the forum plan. There is just a lot of information. We are overloaded by the information. However, we will publish all the information at our resources. We will send it all to the participants of the forum. You will be able to see the recording, and you'll have a lot of